So the Orthodox Muslim is about to teach us how to count.
There's two books because when we count, we consider two things. The type or category of the things we're counting. So in order to count 2 or 3 books, we must first be counting books. We can't be counting apples and oranges, right? We must count within the same type or category. That's one. 2, we must count distinct units. So if there's distinct units and they're both books, then we count 2 books, right?
What he says here is that the type token distinction is necessary for counting, for determining whether an object is 1, 2, or however many. Is that true? No. Let's see what he has to say. So he gives the example with the book, and he says, first we have to identify the type of book or the type of thing that it is we're counting, and then we have tokens of that thing, whether it be 1, 2, or however many. Now, this is a very common Muslim objection, and it is just false. The type token distinction is not necessary for counting, but more on that later. Let's just go through his own line of reasoning, and let's take it and see if his own line of reasoning follows from what he's saying.
To the books.
No, those are your points.
If we counted God the same way we counted books, how many gods would we count?
Remember what he said. He said it is necessary that it be of the same type. So let's give a couple examples. You have sunglasses, and then you have instances of sunglasses. You have water bottles, then you have, or the type would be water bottle, then you have water bottles. You have book as a type, then you have books. You have God as a type, then you have, what is it? Persons? Well, do you see what he just did there? Well, he said it has to be of the same type, but is person of the type God? No. Person is of the type, or persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, are of the type person. Gods would be of the type God. Now, that does not mean that the persons are not God, just like persons can be human, right? But if we're counting humans, then the type would be human. If we're counting persons, then the type would be person. But remember what he said. I can't be counting books and then all of a sudden count trees, instances of trees. But here, he tries to do a sleight of hand where he's counting gods, and then suddenly he switches the type to person. Think about it. Persons are of the type person, right? They're not of the type water bottle. They're not of the type of thing they are is not a water bottle, it's not book, and it's not God, right? That does not mean that the persons are not God. That just means that the type of thing being talked about, being counted, is person. So you can't just suddenly go from God, I'm counting gods, to Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, because you're mixing types, which by his logic, as he says, is impossible, because it is necessary that we first count by the type of thing that it is.
So in order to count 2 or 3 books, we must first be counting books. We can't be counting apples and oranges, right? We must count within the same type or category. That's one.
So his own logic crumbles upon itself. It makes no sense. He's contradicting himself. Now that we went over how, using his own reasoning, he doesn't know how to count, let's give some counterexamples to the claim that we count everything by type and token. So remember what type and token is that there's a universal, in most views, of some kind, where you have the kind of thing, a book or whatever, and then you have instances. And he's saying it's impossible to count if you don't specify the kind of thing that's being counted. Well, let's look at a very common counterexample, groupings. If I have an apple, a pear, and a water bottle on a table, you can go up to the table and say, there are 3 things on the table if I ask you. Now, what's the type of thing being counted there? Things? Well, thing isn't a type because it doesn't specify the kind of thing being counted. It doesn't specify whether it's an apple, a pear, or a water bottle, because there's nothing that unites them. So it's a very clear counterexample against the case that everything we count is in type and token. And here's a counterexample against the view that just tokenizing something is doing some individuating work, meaning that it's giving you some principle for determining whether there's one, two, or three objects. Imagine a cloud and it has vague boundaries. If we're able to identify the type of thing that it is, a cloud, and I ask you how many clouds are there, and to person one, it seems like there's two clouds. To person two, it seems like there's one cloud. And that's because the clouds are sort of look like two, but they also kind of look like one because they're right next to each other, touching each other, right on their boundaries. So who's right? Well, you would need something other than just saying they're tokens of a type in order to individuate them, right? Which shows that the type token distinction isn't doing any work for determining how we count. It is realized after the fact of individuating those two things or one thing. So it's a very clear counterexample against the case. So no, it is not sufficient to just claim the type token distinction somehow disproves the Trinity because of ordinary counting, when, as we've shown, in ordinary counting all the time in groupings, we do not use type token distinction, not to mention other cases. What has to be talked about is the underlying metaphysics, the principle of individuation. What is it such that makes that there one God? What would make it such that there are two gods? And how does each person being identical to the divine essence or having the divine essence cause such individuation amongst the gods sortal? That's what has to be talked about, not just some type token distinction that does no work for individuation at all. Now, Libiano, he's extremely confused. So I hope that by making videos on this guy, like, it just completely helps you guys, like, in your confidence of how discredited he is and how unknowledgeable he is on the matter. He's just a sophist.